the Strait of Hormuz. But he has also added in the post that he put out that something revolutionarily wonderful can happen before this deadline ends. So we asked this evening on Nation Wants to Know, what really awaits Iran? Peace or apocalypse? Is there scope of peace at all? Is there a possibility that perhaps tonight the war is going to end? The war that has been going on for 39 long days. Today is day 39. It started on 28th of February. And what is it that Trump plans to do tonight? He has warned that a civilization will get wiped. But look.
He continues to say the deadline is 8 o'clock. And the deadline is for what? Fundamentally, what Iran is trying to do, because they've been defeated militarily, is they're trying to extract as much economic pain on the world as possible. And the President of the United States is a man who recognizes leverage, that if the Iranians want to exact a certain amount of pain, the United States has the ability to exact much, much greater pain. The president doesn't want to do that. I don't want to do that. That's why we're negotiating so aggressively. But fundamentally, the ball is in the Iranians' court.
And what is it that Donald Trump can really do tonight? Let's try and discuss it with our guests who are joining us on the broadcast this evening. We have with us Prabhu Dayal, former diplomat. We also have with us Neeraj A. Sharma, international relations expert. Milad Rabbani, former Iranian diplomat. Sierra Claire, foreign policy analyst. Good evening to all of you. Thank you very much for joining us here on Times Now. Ambassador Prabhu Dayal, to you first. When you read the post that was put out by Donald Trump just a short while ago, precisely 12 hours before his deadline to Iran ends, what was your first reaction when he talks about ending a civilization? The whole civilization is going to die tonight. What does it really, mean to you? What do you think he's trying to say? What is it that he can possibly do?
Well, I think that the situation in the Iran conflict is now extremely critical. And the remarks of President Trump highlight this fact because I think it's escalating into a wider regional war. Now, significantly, while President Trump has set the deadline of 8 p.m. Eastern time, which is 5:30 a.m. here in India, before he launches a full-fledged attack on Iran, the fact is that the U.S. military today hit several military targets on Karg Island, which is Iran's strategic oil hub. Now, these strikes, which were reported both by the Iranian media and there in the United States, become very significant because they represent a critical escalation in the ongoing regional war. Because, the island is considered Iran's crown jewel because it serves as the terminal for approximately 90% of the country's crude oil exports. So as I see it, the situation has already escalated very sharply. Iran has said it is not going to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. So I think that there is going to be a bloodbath tomorrow unless something significant happens and things can be brought under control.
Okay, this is serious what you're saying. You're saying that you're expecting a bloodbath tomorrow, going by what we have seen coming in so far as the situation is concerned. Milad Rabbani, even the negotiators have been ejected. As per the reports that we are getting from international media, Iran has closed doors for diplomacy, for negotiation as well.
Yes, the Iranian regime, they are capable of doing anything. And in one side, we have Trump. Trump is psychologically a person with many problems. He is ill in mental and he has some health issues that affect his capability as a president. And the other side is a regime that they have some pro and fans in Iran. And if they want to negotiate under these terms, they will lose these fans. And when they lose these fans, they will lose the control over everything. So this situation for them is not the worst one. Of course, this is catastrophic for Iranian people, but not Trump nor Iranian regime. They don't care about the Iranian people. So what we can see and what we can expect for the next days, it is the closure of diplomatic doors and the escalation of war. And until Trump wants to believe he can gain the victory by airstrike, it's a big mistake. And there will be no regime change by airstrike until they support the real Iranian people. I don't use the word opposition. You know why? Because more than 90% of Iranians are opposition of the regime. They don't want this regime continue because from the moment of their existence, they continue on the blood of Iranian people. And this is what we are looking. They use people as a human shield. They are very happy for these attacks, for this war. They are very thankful to Trump and Netanyahu because this crisis is something that helped this regime to continue its existence. You know, the regimes like the Islamic regime, without crisis, they don't have any philosophical reason for existence.
Right. Okay, stay on with us. I want to quickly take that point across to Neeraj Sharma as well, because this was the initial point, when this war started, that was being made by Trump administration as well, that this is what Iranians on the ground really want. But we've not really seen any kind of uprising by the people. Things are still continuing as it is in Iran.
So, when you are undergoing a serious attack of such magnitude, as citizens, what you want to look at first is safety of yourself. And you put your safety in the hands of the governance which is in place. So I think that is what is happening. But on the other side, you can never negotiate peace with a ticking time bomb in your hand and a gun in the other. So I think what is happening is that with not just Strait of Hormuz, but now we are also looking at Bab al-Mandab, the Red Sea to the Arabian Sea connection, which might also see a blockade because the Houthi forces in Yemen are backed by the Iranians. So what is happening is that President Trump is now under serious pressure to call for a ceasefire, but then this is now becoming a war of egos than war of muscles.
Okay.
The on the other side, if you I'm just adding to what to beyond what you asked me for. On the other side, now you have Taiwan, which is now looking very seriously at their own security. In fact, I was just watching today that the Taiwanese governance, a few people from there are going to meet President Xi Jinping in China. So all this is putting a lot of pressure on the American administration.
Okay.
While the Iranians, like I've always said, have blood on their mind. 9 crore people, wiping them out is not easy. Let's look at mankind. Let's also not forget that Iranians are capable of using the nuclears if they have them.
Absolutely.
So we are.
And the downing of F-35, F-15, burning of C-130 clearly shows that Iran's capabilities aren't dead. As Trump claims, they have been degraded, but they are not dead. They are not over. Iran is quite capable of retaliating. That's exactly what we are seeing happening. Stay on with us. In fact, we also would like to bring for our viewers another important update. Now, amid attacks on Iranian infrastructure that we saw happening today, viewers, Iranian Consulate General released a video showing an initiative by Iranians where we can see them forming a human chain around power plants. The caption, in fact, read, "No Iranian wants to see their country's infrastructure harmed." Sarah Claire, how do you see these visuals? Just see, there are women, there are children forming the human chains and trying to protect their infrastructure. And even before the deadline could end, attack on power lines, railway networks had already started.
Well, I think it's absolutely disgusting that the Iranian regime is trying to hide behind civilian human shields. The reason that anything would be targeted in Iran is because the IRGC is adopting it as a military use. And so, if they are now sending their civilians, that's what they have to do, is to send civilians to their military headquarters. This is exactly the problem with this regime. And on back on to what JD Vance said, you were talking about that they've closed all diplomatic ties, but JD Vance said he's confident that we will get an answer from the Iranian regime tonight, one way or the other. So I think that, it's also been made clear that this is the deadline. There's no more extensions. And so we'll have to just see what the Iranian regime decides to do.
Okay. Ambassador Prabhu Dayal, do you agree with what Sierra Claire has said? Because if we go by the rules of the game, I mean, there was a deadline till around 5:36 a.m. India time. There was still 12 hours left. Yet attacks on civilian infrastructure actually started taking place. We have seen similar thing happening in the past also. When this particular war started, just hours before the war started, hours before the first airstrike, the negotiations were going on, and we thought that probably they are moving in the right direction. So is Trump breaking rules once again? And if Trump is breaking rules again and again, then can he expect to Iran also to follow the rules?
Well, the rules have been broken right from the beginning. Because firstly, as the Omani foreign minister pointed out, the two sides were negotiating and were coming very close to a deal. Yet the attack on Iran took place. So the Iranians feel that the other side is not going to respect any rules whatsoever. Now, let us see what is now going to happen. As you pointed out, there is a deadline which is still 8 p.m. Eastern Time in the United States and 5:30 a.m. here. That deadline has been preempted by strikes which have already taken place on Iranian civilian targets. Some very important civilian targets have been attacked. And I think that the Iranians are saying very clearly that they don't trust whatsoever is said by the other side. In other words, trust has been totally eroded in this conflict. Okay. In any case, trust is always a casualty in war. Neither side trusts the other at all. However, the consequences for the civilians, not just in Iran, but also in the Arab Gulf states, are going to be very consequential. Okay. Iran will suffer immense damage to its civilian infrastructure, but it has said that in retaliation, it will attack desalination plants, oil installations, and of course, gas refineries, gas installations in the Gulf. So the consequences are going to be horrific.
Okay. I also would like to quickly show to our viewers a post that was put out by Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian in response to Trump's warnings. And he had said 14 million Iranians are ready to sacrifice lives. He said that he himself is also ready to die for the nation. He said, I too am ready to give my life. So Sierra Claire, coming back to the point that you had made, using civilians as a shield may be wrong, but attacking vital installations is also a war crime, especially when there is a deadline that the US president himself had given. So why absolve the US completely?
Well, first of all, you said that you cannot negotiate under a deadline. That is absolutely the only way to deal with the Iranians. They have been extending deadlines for 47 years under past American presidents. And, whether it's Trump or somebody else, at some point, somebody was going to say, hey, no more extensions. We got to come to a resolution. And that's what's happening. And on the civilian infrastructure, as I said before, the U.S. military only targets infrastructure that they have intelligence confirming is either having a dual use, military use, and civilian use, or has been adopted by the IRGC because we have taken out many of their underground bunkers and headquarters. So now they are adopting other locations as their headquarters. And so that's the legal side of it. And I don't believe there are any war crimes on that side of it.
Okay. I also would like to quickly show to our viewers warnings that Donald Trump has given ever since this war started. Viewers, 22nd of March also, Trump said, this is the last time I will give Iran 48 hours. Open the strait, Iran is dead. 26th of March, he had said, make a deal or we will just keep blowing them away. Then 30th of March, he said, open the Strait of Hormuz immediately or face devastating consequences. 3rd of April, he again said something big is going to happen. Then April 5th, he used, the kind of language he used shocked the entire world. It was a post that was full of expletives, and he had said that you'll be living in hell. And then on 7th of April came another threat wherein he said whole civilization is going to die tonight. So Neeraj, I want to quickly ask you, we've seen similar kind of warnings coming in the past as well. In your opinion, when, Trump says whole civilization is going to die, attacks on power infrastructure, railway lines has already started. What is it? What are those crucial installations that could be possibly targeted, in your opinion, tonight by Trump?
I think majorly it's going to be installations which cater to the civilian population. So most installations like railway lines or petroleum installations or airports are all fields where civilians are catered to. But I want to draw your attention to Iran's 10-point formula which they have put forward. And in that they have asked for ending conflict in the region. They have asked for a permanent end to the war than a short-term ceasefire. They have asked for an end of Israeli attacks on Hezbollah in Lebanon. So I don't know why we are not talking about that, because Iran also somewhere had put out this 10-point plan to discuss and negotiate. What, like I said, we are trying to put a gun on the other's head and negotiate, which definitely is not going to happen. But coming back to the point of the key installations, I think major installations across the Middle Eastern countries is getting attacked, and it is going to impact the human life. We are already seeing petrol go up by almost 60% in small countries like Bhutan, Nepal, Maldives. So we are already starting to see the impact of such attacks. And I think in the interest of humanity, these installations have to be spared.
Right. Right. We'll leave it there. Thank you very much, all of you, for joining us here today. We'll, of course, be tracking the developments very, very closely.